guys, and welcome to Betwixt the Books, where we are doing another reading roundtable where some of our friends are joining us to chat about some of the things we've been reading. This time, we are bringing you a bunch of LGBTQIA plus recs. Hopefully, some of them might be bad. We don't know, but hopefully they're recs right before Pride Month so that you can get some stuff that you might want to add to your TBR for the month. Obviously, you don't have to read them in June. You can read them whenever you want because we read ours in May. So uh just read gay books all the time. Be like me and just read gay books all the time. That's all you do. Nailed it. We're gonna go around and introduce ourselves. You should know me and Gretchen, but you may not know our guests. You might have seen them already. I believe they were together on a reading roundtable previously as well. So
this was not planned.
This was not planned.
We have similar interests.
So yes, we will go around and introduce ourselves, and then we're just gonna sit here and chat about books. Feel free to chat with us in the comments about any Pride Recs that you have, because we are always looking for some as well. So please hand those along if you have them.
So hi, my name is Gretchen. I am usually on the channel either reading a smut or nonfiction, like political and historical. It's a very right brain, left brain situation usually from me. I was talking to Michaela and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to bring to this today because I've been on a true crime kick and I absolutely did not need to bring true crime to our Pride Fest. Did not want that. That's bad enough. And Michaela and I usually read our gay romances together and do videos on those where I was like, yes. Well, I can't read one on my own. So I brought something that is a little bit it is nonfiction, but it's definitely very different for me. And I'm so stoked to talk about it. And I think that that's one of the awesome things about the mildly themed reading roundtable is that you can pick something that you enjoy, but is also just potentially something very different. So I can't wait to tell you about my book because it is neither smut nor politics. So be proud.
She read outside of her comfort zones.
I read outside of my box.
Yes, well, I'm Taylor. I'm always happy to be back over here betwixt the books. It's nice to just be, I don't know. It's always nice to come back and do none of the work. But I am a children's librarian, primarily youth, but also bridging into the YA because we're a pretty small team. So I have really been taking my opportunity with all the books coming through to kind of catch myself up on I mean, especially the queer graphic novels because they go quickly and that's really just a very interesting and fun genre to be in. It's been really cool to dip into more recent queer novels, especially in the middle grade range and see how have things changed, which is remarkably different now than 10 years ago. And so what I've brought to the table today are two pulls from our YA graphics, so the slightly older age group. I have Cheer Up, Love and Pom Poms, and Cross My Heart and Never Lie. I guess I'll talk about them later. I forgot I wasn't supposed to really get into it, but
you're good.
I just brought two of my new recent enjoyed picks from the library.
I'm Des. I always act like they dragged me here kicking and screaming, but really I volunteered myself. But I complain.
It's so big to admit that.
Thanks. I am in the psychology field, but that's not as fun as working with books. So to accommodate that, I'm also a writer and I write LGBTQ, which Michaela told me I can shamelessly plug later, and I'm going to. But the book I brought is lesbians. We love lesbians. I don't have anything long-winded enough to say.
That's totally fair. Lesbians valid. It works. Hi.
A person just walked outside my window and went, yeah, lesbians. So that was good.
I love that. Perfect.
Word on the street is, yay, lesbians.
Yay, lesbians. go lesbians. Okay.
And we
Hi.
thought this wasn't going to be a live broadcast.
Hi, I'm Michaela. You've seen my face around. You know that I talk about LGBTQ books all the time. I'm a bookseller at Barnes & Noble. You can maybe tell from all of the many books behind me. But this is not out of the norm of my reading. It was not out of my comfort zone. I was originally planning to read a novella that I got, but I got distracted with steady fix like I normally do, and it has been a hot minute since I practiced steady fix, so I'm just gonna do steady fix, because it counts. They're gay. That's all I got for you today. If you wanted to know what I was originally planning to read, because I do think that it's going to be good, and I probably will still read it at some point this week. I just didn't get to it before we were filming. The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello is a historical book featuring a trans mask character moving into Appalachia as a nurse, and having to deal with spooky woods / religious culty vibes. So if that's something that you're interested in, maybe pick this one up. If you recognize Lee Mandella's name, he wrote Summer Sons, which was like a full-length horror book, which I enjoyed. So yeah, if you need a want or need a bite-sized horror book that is LGBTQ plus, The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello. I'll give that recommendation here, so I'm not going to be talking about it.
So I read a book like specifically for this, and it was a really funny story because Michaela and I, when we were talking about this, I was like, oh, I guess I have to like start reading a book for this, and I don't really know what I want to read for it because I have too many options. And like I just don't know what to do. And I just started to like randomly Google like recent queer nonfiction, just to kind of see what was out there. Because again, normally when I read queer books, they're like romances with Michaela, or they're, you know, young adult, like, you know, they're not. So I was like, what is there? Is there nonfiction out there that I would be interested in reading or listening to? And I found this book on like my first Google search, and it's called How Far the Light Reaches: A Life in 10 Sea Creatures by Sabrina Imbler. And I started to read this, and I'm just going to read you part of the book description because like you can go on the same journey I went on, which was like, oh my God, what? A queer mixed race writer working in a largely white male field, science and conservation journalist Sabrina Imbler has always been drawn to the mystery of life in the sea, and particularly to creatures living in hostile or remote environments. And then so each chapter focuses on a different sea creature. Imbler discovers that some of the most radical models of family, community, and care can be found in the sea. Exploring themes of adaptation, survival, sexuality, and care, and weaving the wonders of marine biology and stories of their own family, relationships, and coming of age, How Far the Light Reaches is a book that invites us to envision wilder, grander, and more abundant possibilities for the way that we live. And I got to the bottom of that, and I said, I don't care how long this is gonna be my book for this roundtable. Because I was like, and I mean, not that it doesn't sound amazing, but I was also like, how is this going to work? Like, how does this, I mean, you get it from that, but I was like, because some of the sea creatures that are involved in this are like the Chinese sturgeon, the bobbit worm, like these really like creatures. I mean, there's like octopus and squid and jellyfish also involved, but like also like these other creatures. And like, I was like, how is this going to work? And the answer is incredibly surprisingly well. I did not quite expect this from hearing that Sabrina Imbler is a science and conservation writer. I rather expected their writing, they use they them pronouns, to be a little bit more scientific. And it is an odd mix of like when they are talking about the sea creatures, more scientific writing, but the personal essay one is quite literary, and like a high literary, like almost like poetry style of writing, which was really interesting. And I was really, really surprised about how well the different each chapter is a braided essay, which literally is, so that's braiding together, like talking a little bit about the sea creature and then talking about something from their life and back to the sea creature in their life. That's what a braided essay means. I know you all know because you all write, but for our viewers who don't know, that's what I'm talking about when I say that. Braided essays, as someone who has also written them, are incredibly hard to write, to continue to keep one theme moving back towards two rather disparate topics. And so again, I was like, there's going to be a chapter where this doesn't really work. But it did. It worked so well. And so like one example was this basically mob of what are they called? I can't remember what they're called. They call it salts. And they are an organism that basically replicates itself into like a mass. And so they like but they're not really valued by scientists because like an individual run doesn't really do much on its own. Like they have to like mob and come together. And then Sabrina Imler kind of meshes that with the idea of how queer people have to find their own spaces in which they like come together and make one cohesive whole to find community. And also talking about the immortal squid, which has the ability to basically reverse aging and reverse themselves backward. And so, you know, Sabrina Imler talks about like their own journey to like figure out their own identity and like transformation. So talk about like transness or like gender queerness, and I was like, I'm flabbergasted by how well this worked. And also I'm just like learning cool things about sea creatures.
Really the goal.
It's just like, it's really wild. So I cannot, if it's like something that vaguely sounds of interest, it's not actually a long book. It's like 230 pages. I think it's quite short. The audiobook was under 6 hours. What I would say is that I highly recommend not listening to the audiobook. Again, as everyone here is a writer, but like, I don't know how much people often think about this, but on a page, white space can be really important. And particularly in a braided essay, I don't know what this book looks like on the page, so I could be speaking out of like the back of my head here, but particularly in a braided essay, like you use that white space to give the reader a chance to pause as you transition between the different strands of the braid, or like you do something visual that kind of like helps people like demarcate where you're going in the essay. And listening to the audiobook kind of just felt like it just kept rolling. And the writing is so literary also. And it was like at a certain time, I was like, I just had to like hit the pause button. And I was like, wait, I just need a minute. Like, I just need a minute. And so it kind of felt like I didn't get those moments to pause and really take advantage of the braided essay style as much in the audiobook. And also there was a section which I literally did not realize until I listened to the acknowledgements was, and this was in the part about the immortal squid, like how many different lives would, you know, queer people talking about how like queer people have like two childhoods, right? Like one where you're just like living and it's all really messed up and confusing, and one where you've like got it figured out and you can like go and live your life in your truth. And this idea that the squid can like reverse its and like live through its childhood again. And they were all like lives and dreams from a variety of different queer people that were put into this essay. Because I was really confused because like there was one like live 13 is like on a trans man. And then I was like, I'm really confused here because so much of this has been about her like starting life as a woman and being really uncomfortable with that, but also dealing with like her Asian mom's ideas of what women should look like and how she needed to not only be a certain type of female, but be a certain type of white female.
And to clarify, is this the author or
the author? Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
So that's what I mean. Like when I got into like all of these lives and they were talking about like all of these different queer identities, I was just like, who's talking right now? I'm really confused. And like, I think had I been able to see the page, it would have been more obvious what was happening. That Sabrina Emler was incorporating like different people's dreams for their second lives or 13th lives or whatever it is. And then apparently also in the acknowledgement, there's artwork. A queer friend like rendered art for all of these sea creatures like in the book.
Cool.
And that obviously I did not get, and I wouldn't have even known existed if I hadn't been listening to the acknowledgements. So yeah, I think it's like one of those books that like does not work as an audiobook as well as it would on the printed page, given things that the medium of the page provides. But it was really, really gorgeous, and I can't speak highly enough of it. And so if you're just like, this sounds really, really odd, it is, but it's odd and it's wonderful and makes you feel things. So
did you get everything out of it that you were expecting? Because I was on the call when she found this book and was very excited about the prospect of it. So lived up to your expectations.
I thought at the very least I would get like fun, like sea creature facts. And I'm like, I really love marine biology. Like my favorite science class in high school was oceanography. And so I was just like, I'll at least get like something cool out of it. Because I really was not, I was really interested to see how it would be written, but I was not convinced that was going to be pulled off successfully, or it was going to be one of those things where you're trying to make a metaphor so hard, it's like punching you in the face, and you're like, I get it, please stop. You know, like, I got it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I did feel like there were some parts of the book that felt a little bit like that, but it's also, I have a very low tolerance for like fluffy literary writing. And I'm not saying it's not beautiful. It's just, I read so much straight, like nonfiction now. I don't mean straight as in like,
straight people.
Like regular nonfiction, right? That's written in a very specific way. So I was like, yes,
one could argue that is very heteronormative.
It is. But to be fair, I've also read like gay memoirs that are just like written. This is just like a level of like fancy language where I was like, yes, I get it. It's pretty, but I get it.
Yeah.
But I recognize that as a me problem, as someone who I've just had a lot of, I think the amount of nonfiction that I read, the style of nonfiction that I read has affected ways that I read other things now.
Sure.
That I already had a really low tolerance for like fancy, like unnecessary language, and now I'm just like, no. Chop it. No, anyway, I feel like I've gone on way too long, but I feel like the last couple of reading roundtables that we've done, I've also showed up and I've been like, don't read my book.
And this time you liked it.
Yes, and this time I liked it and it was wonderful, and I wouldn't have read it if it wasn't for this. And I think it's something that it wasn't like clearly like not known, because it was up for like a Goodreads Choice Award, I think in 2023. But yeah, it's really wonderful. So that was my book.
Fantastic. Yeah, as I mentioned, I brought 2 graphic novels, and this has been like a really fun season for me getting into them. Like, preceding these, I have just recently read Mall Goth by Kate Leff, and The Deep and Dark Blue by Nikki Smith, which was like a middle grade graphic novel that like got into a lot of cool magic and was just like really pretty. I loved the trans themes and everything, and like I want to mention those of like being really cool stuff. But I also just really enjoyed dipping into both of the ones I've brought today. The first one of these, Cross My Heart and Never Lie, is a translation. It is a Norwegian book. And is about a child, I think, going into the cusp of teenagerhood and like about to change the school systems, which they explain as kind of that line into the older teen groups. And so having this pressure of maturing and friends either becoming interested in relationships or really pushing back against that. And this main character, Tuva, really being unsure about a lot of her identity and what she even wanted, but like a crush on a girl has kind of starts situating things of like, oh, maybe this isn't all as like confusing and likable as I thought it was, and like moving forward in that more familiar coming of age story, but with a very interesting and kind of like restrained queer love story. The whole style of the graphic novel is through a journal and kind of like a day by day account of things, which I always enjoy either in nonfiction or just like a fiction take on the epistolary or journal form. And like with the art and all of those things, really loved this. The other one, however, came in a bit higher on my list. It's a much shorter read. Like this feels like the volumes you get of like 4 or 5 issues of a comic book, like really surprisingly short. And I think it does well with that more limited scope. It has 2 primary characters in high school, one who's kind of more against the grain, openly, knowingly a lesbian, but also like struggling in class and like getting funneled into cheerleading by her mom as a way to like do something that's working. Um, the friend she reconnects in that is a childhood friend she has grown distant from and who has come out as trans feminine in the previous year of high school and is now kind of like in one of the lead roles on this cheerleading team. So they both have these kind of out of comfortable waters story, but like the pressures going on to them being very different. The trans character like being really confident in herself and like having the immediate support of her peers and everything, but still feeling like she's kind of held up like a mascot or something, or kind of used as like, oh, well, of course we're gonna elect the trans player to be our team lead because like that shows the message that we like believe in her, but still like being othered by those things. And our other character needing to connect a lot more with like earnestness and trust of other people. And I think it ties up really well. It's very efficient with its space, as I said, and I just found it to be like fun and colorful. It's got a very common kind of realistic, kind of softer color palette that you get in a lot of things, and I could just consume these endlessly. I adore this stuff. And so I found both of them to be pretty low in terms of like the the angst while still being realistic and kind of when dealing with, I guess, when approaching narratives with like trans themes, especially, is something like I both am excited to see more in books, but also like very much frustrated by. There's ones that go for very simple, like supportive, but ultimately like kind of toothless within our current discourse in society. And it's nice to have something that can kind of bridge the gap of not being a tragic, painful tale, but is still like having meaningful discussions for the actual experience people are going through in these spaces at these ages. And like, yeah, as fairly recent to being a youth librarian and starting to get to know the community and seeing like how it's approaching queerness and everything, it's been, I don't know, it's been a very gratifying whole process of reading and learning. So any of those books I listed, I would absolutely recommend. And I'm very happy to see these on like award shelves and readers' choice exit like displays. Like it's really cool, heartening to see in a time when a lot of things don't feel cool or heartening.
Yeah.
So, woo. Yay.
I mean, especially with currently like the war on middle grade, um, it's just really unfortunate. Um, I saw someone tweet the other day. They were like, publishers, who do you think is going to read your YA novels if there's no middle grade for them? And I was like, that is a very fair point. Because for anyone who doesn't know, there's been like a lot of middle grade just not either getting published or just not being stocked on shelves at places like Barnes and Noble for some unknown reason. Well, the reasons are slightly known, but
I mean, as someone who works at Barnes and Noble, the sales in middle grade is like way down. Like the biggest sector of returns that we do is middle grade, which is one of the reasons why, like, there was an article about it where the company stopped stocking hardcover middle grades, with the exception of like your Dogmans, your Wimpy Kid, like your big name ones, like
the new Rick Riordan.
Yeah, they don't buy stock in hardcover middle grade anymore. It's all paperback because just the sheer volume of returns that we send back to the publisher, people aren't buying middle grade. And I don't know if that's because they're using libraries more so because of the like cost,
general economic influences. Just like, is it just middle grade books are perceived as being shorter or more frivolous, and so parents are less willing to spend the money on that? Like, you get a lot of series at that age where, like, my wife Emily has talked about, like, her parents wouldn't buy them for her because she'd have read them by the time they got home from the bookstore.
Same
thing. That doesn't make it less valuable reading, but it's just these are the conventions of length and etc. that we're kind of geared to.
Yeah.
Well,
and no one wants to talk about how the boom in YA was not YA readers. It was because like they were being read by people our age or older. Not that we weren't all reading YA when we actually were YAs. But like that was real.
It was the family read it.
Yeah. But anyway, to your point, I just think like, especially right now where every single corner of the world just seems to be on fire in some way or another, to be able to have access to stories, because for so long also any queer story was like a story that involved sadness. And to just have
it was joy. Angels in America. Like middle grade and up. That was the
would you
only
like a
narrative
Harvey
you
Milk
got.
biography? That's all you get. As far as middle grade graphic novels go, for LGBTQ rep, I would like to recommend Snapdragon. I think the author's first name on that is Kat, but that one also includes a trans character, and I believe that the protagonist grandparents are lesbians, or grandmother is a lesbian. There's witches. I don't know. It was just super cute and fun.
I haven't had a chance to read it, but it's been on our displays and it's really popular. For us at least.
Do recommend that one if you're looking for another one. It was cute.
I fell victim to book talk recommending me a book. That's how I read this. The author had this cute little like bundle package with her book, and it came with these 2 art prints. I got them out. It came with these 2 art prints. They're very cute.
Oh, cute.
And it came with 4 stickers. If I can hold them all up.
I can see how this won you over.
Yeah, see, the pretty stickers won me over, okay? And she had mailers. I didn't get one of the mailers, and I'm still bitter about it. But she had mailers that had artwork. She's laughing because I complained to her about it. It had artwork of the cover on it, on the mailer. And I was really excited about it. And that is the whole reason I bought it. And because it was lesbians and cozy fantasy. And we all know I love me some cozy fantasy.
And I see one of those lesbians has like little devil horns. Is that correct?
Yes, she does. So this is called Between Mischief and Magic by Marissa Serraro. And I think this is the first book in a series, actually. And it is about a woman named Ray, who is half succubus, half satyr. I was not expecting that when I opened this book, but that's what happened. And the love interest is a dryad who is the princess of Ceres, which is the kingdom they live in.
Oh my.
And the premise of this story is Ray's brother and fiance kick her out abruptly one morning, and she is sitting at a bar, and this woman she has never seen before comes up to this bar, obviously pulls out these really expensive coins that she should not have in this part of the kingdom, and Ray tries to help her out by stealing one of her coins to protect her, as she claims. And it is discovered that the woman she meets is the princess. And what the princess is doing is the princess is looking for her magic because someone stole it. And Ray has a power that can sense magic. So that is how they get onto this journey together. There's witches, there's like a whole coven of witches. There's these mutant cats that they're literally called mutant cats, and they turn into these big shadows and have these interesting powers. Obviously there's some demons in there, but
obviously
I have a love-hate relationship with the book because the characters I loved. I loved Ray, I loved Amara, like I loved them. They were great. Their relationship felt kind of forced. They had banter. The banter was great, but the banter read like two best friends that you've known for 20 years that bicker like an old married couple, but don't actually have romantic feelings for each other. That's how it read.
Yeah.
So the relationship felt forced, and the ending was eh. The book is only, let me see, it's not that long. 284 pages, so not that long. It's a pretty quick read. She tried to wrap up the entire plot in the last 20 pages. So there's all these plot holes. I can see the faces Gretchen is making, and I'm trying not to laugh. There's all these plot holes that are in there. And I was sitting there reading the end, and I'm kind of just like, but what about this? What about this? What about this? Her demon powers didn't come up until halfway through the book when it was convenient, and they were super OP, which was I mean, I kind of expected it for like a cozy fantasy for that to happen, but at the same time, I'm an avid D&D player, which I talked about last time, and I was sitting there like, this doesn't make any sense. And like even the other cozy fantasies I read, because I read like Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust, and those I loved. I would recommend those all the time. More lesbians if you were curious. I don't know. I liked it, but I didn't like it. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, it was a good plot, but the execution was eh. Like, the beginning started out where she was talking about this tragic thing that happened to her, and then it never came up again until like the very end of the book. Never came up again. And with the romance, it was okay. Felt forced, like I said, but essentially what happened was they went from hating each other's guts one page to suddenly in love. And I was like, I don't understand what is happening.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you got from here to here. It does not make narrative sense. I'm confused. So it was okay. It wasn't my favorite. The art was really cute. I liked her little package she did. Would I pay $40 for this again? No, I would not.
But you also didn't get your mailer.
I didn't get my mailer, and I'm still mad about it. I paid the $40 for this stupid mailer. Honestly, didn't happen. It was just this plain purple little envelope, and I was disappointed, sad face. It was a thing. I texted Michaela, and I was like, listen, I can't believe I just paid $40 for this. If it does not at least have my stickers, I will cry. It did have my stickers, and I was still very bitter. But yeah, it was okay. The Seder part was kind of, it was kind of weird. At first, she was making all these jokes about how like they have these weird cravings and can't help themselves from like eating things, but it never happened. It just didn't happen, and I was like, what? Where's the funny?
Also, satyrs are kind of notoriously sexually active and whatnot.
I was gonna say, just take two horny creatures and just be like, here you go.
Like, as someone who reads so much romance, like a god's awful amount of romance, like the fact when romance novels do not realize that the reason we are here is because I want them to kiss, but I don't want them to kiss, right? I want to watch them want to kiss each other.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
I think the legend, sorry, do
no,
continue.
I was just like, so what Des was just saying about how like they hate each other and then they're in love. And I'm like, immediately, I'm just like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah,
like
that's
you've
exactly
cut my entire favorite part out of this book.
And that's exactly what happened with it, because I was flying through it. I was flying through it, and then I got to that part, and I was like, well, I'm bored. There's all this chunk of the book left, but why are they in love already? That doesn't make any sense. And I think it took me another 2 weeks to actually finish it. And this was not the book I planned to read. It just kind of happened that way. I planned to read a completely different book, but that's fine. I don't remember the name of it. It's on my shelf somewhere. I could find it if I wanted to, but that requires me getting up, and I'm not going to. Yeah, it was okay. It was all right. The humor was pretty decent, and like the characters were good. Romance was the story was good idea, poor execution. I gave it, I think, like a 3.5 stars, if I remember right. I think Michaela could check. She follows me on Story Graph.
I could check. Do you want me to?
No. The other shameless plug, since Michaela's going to talk about fan fiction, she has mentioned my fic before. It is called All the Things He Said, and I'm working towards getting it published. It is published under 5 Nights at Freddy's. Do not judge me. I just use their names. That's it. Like
my connection for hearing you mention the title cut out a little when you spoke. Could you repeat it?
It is called All the Things He Said. And it is about a man, obviously named Bonnie for fan fiction purposes, who was forced to adopt his godson after his best friend was killed in a car accident. And he opens his door one night to find his ex-boyfriend, who had left on tour with his band 2 years before, standing on his doorstep asking if they can talk. And it is over 500K words, so Gretchen probably would not like it because it's super long, and there's a lot of love. Son of love. But it's smutty, it's angsty. I go into a lot of the mental health stuff. It's really, really long, but I'm working on cutting it down and getting it ready for publishing. But if you want to read it before then, because that'll take me probably a good decade, it's on AO3. Michaela has linked it before. I'm sure she could link it again. And she's read it, so she can actually tell you how it is. I'm just biased because I read it.
No, it is great, especially if you're a person who likes angst, because it definitely is very much like trauma, 17 different ways to Sunday. Every single person in this fic has different trauma.
Wait. No, never mind. You're right.
Yeah, huh?
No, there's one. I'm like, no, never mind.
Yeah, they all have a problem. But she's also a person that studies psychology, so like obviously that makes sense. It's really
these are informed traumas.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, I wanted to write a fic where mental health, because the main theme of it is mental health, and I wanted to write a fic that was 1, LGBTQ+, and 2, that was actually focused on mental health but not romanticizing it.
Yes.
Because most of the fics that are out there, or even books, really romanticize like PTSD, which is a big one, and like suicidality and all that stuff. And I was like, no, we're gonna do this realistic. We're gonna show the nitty-gritty of how awful this is for these people. And obviously, like, it gets better for them as the story goes on, because I'm not a monster, believe it or not.
Whoa.
But I did go, there's trigger warnings out the wazoo, but there's smut. So there's that. It's very smutty.
Smut. I would also say
like, not smutty, but it's smutty.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, also just showing the process too, because like if I have to read one more romance novel where at the beginning they're like, I have X mental health problem, and then they're like, and now I love you and I'm healed, and I just begin to flip the table and every other like piece of furniture in my apartment. So just like, it's not like I've been if it was gonna happen, I've been in a committed relationship for like 7-8 years now. We're engaged. Like I'm pretty sure that's like as far like that's it. Why am I not fixed?
Yeah, get fixed.
I was promised things by romance novels that strangely were not real.
The love can fix you. That's all it takes. It's just some love. You're good.
That's not what happened in that one. It does have a happy ending. So there's that. But it takes the reason it's so long is because it takes so long for them to both get into a place where they can actually be in that healthy relationship with each other. So it's really about them like healing themselves, but they love each other at the same time. And even at the end, like it's still not fully healed, it's just better.
Yeah,
because they learned how to talk to people.
Their communication skills improved.
They were communication. Now they're better.
Yes.
Yeah, there's my shameless plug.
Hi. Again, yes, talking about another fan fiction, different fandom. So if you don't like Five Nights at Freddy's, although again, you don't necessarily need to care all that much about the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's to read Des's fic. It works outside of that as well. But I primarily right now read Stranger Things fics, specifically Steve Harrington and Eddie Munson fan fiction. They're behind me over there, which is gay because they're two men. One of the things that
I should be writing this down.
Yeah, they are in fact gay. One of the things that a lot of people like talk about around this fic is specifically Eddie and the queer coding that happens for Eddie in the show. Recently there was a fan fiction event in the fandom called Sub Eddie Week, which was a BDSM prompt thing where there was a different prompt every day that had to do about some BDSM thing, where for once they made Eddie Munson a sub instead of a dom. The reason that the vast majority of the vast majority of the BDSM fics in the SETI fandom have Eddie as the dom is because of his handkerchief. So bit of queer culture. One of the main queer coding things in the show for Eddie is that he has a black handkerchief hanging out of his back left pocket, which some people argue it's just metalhead stuff, but specifically set in the 80s, hanky code was huge in the queer community. It was a way that queer men specifically were able to let other queer men know a couple of things: the color of the handkerchief and the placement of the handkerchief let them know like whether they wanted to give or receive, whether they were a top or a bottom, what sort of sexual acts they were looking for. The black handkerchief in the left pocket means sado top. So vast majority of the BDSM fics set with this pairing usually have Eddie as a top because of that reason. So the fandom was like, hey, we know what the hanky says, but we are going to do a week where we make this skinny little rat man the bottom for once.
I mean, it is fiction.
Yes, yeah, you can do whatever you want. And again, we don't even know if the hanky was purposefully a queer coding thing or if it was just a metalhead culture thing. I've mentioned before that it might have just been Eddie copying James Hetfield, who is the lead guitarist for Metallica. He also often was flagging. So there's that. Like, he may not have known the implications that were with the handkerchief as a young boy in the middle of Indiana with no internet in the 80s. He may not have known. He may have just been copying an idol. But if we read
context is there, clearly.
It's there, and it's a valid reading. So, and anyway. Sub Eddie Week happened, which was a super fun time for me. I love BDSM fics, but I want to talk about one in particular called Sweet Thing, by, I don't know if it's Runninriot or Runninriot. I will post it down below. This one has a professional dom, Steve Harrington. So Steve's job is to dom people. Eddie is one of the people who pays him money to dom him periodically. I believe it's generally about once a month for Eddie usually. And Steve is not supposed to catch feelings for his clients. This is his job. But he likes Eddie. Eddie's a sweet and the most precious good boy, little sweet boy. So they start sort of blurring the line between the professional relationship and the a more not platonic one, let's just say. Eddie asks for another session, like very quick after one, which kind of makes Steve wonder like what's wrong. And he also in this fic seems to keep pushing Steve to punish him more and more and more, which lets Steve as the Dom know that something is wrong. Like Eddie has done something that is making him feel really guilty, and he feels like he needs to push past his boundaries, which is bad. You don't want to feel like your sub isn't going to use their safe words or colors properly because they're trying to harm themselves as a form of punishment, or appeasement in some way for some wrong that he views that he has done. So Steve stops the scene, which I love it when a Dom is like, nope, we're stopping. Because I can see that there's something else going on here. This isn't just you want to be a sub for a while, you want a release of control, that sort of stuff. So there's that. There's a whole lot of aftercare, which I always love in a good BDSM thing, where we're gonna be like, nope, we're gonna talk about what the problem is. And it was that Eddie was catching feelings and Steve was already feeling bad about catching feelings too. So obviously this leads to a relationship. It is a one shot that's just under 10,000 words. So it's pretty quick. And again, it was just for a one-off event in the fandom, but like I love people playing with stuff. So if you're looking for some BDSM representation, it did also end with Steve doing the thing of like, okay, even if we do have a relationship, I am not going to stop being a professional Dom. So like I will be having sex with other people because it's kind of my job to do that. So we also love a sex work positive vibe. So yeah, some cool stuff in the fandom happening recently, 2 years after it really blew up. I love it when events like this happen. So yeah, it's a fun time.
So nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're a fan of Stranger Things, or maybe even if not, it's just a fun time for people.
That reminded me of a supernatural fanfic, actually.
Oh,
That was Dean and Cass, and it was called Carry On. And I remember, yeah, do you know it? Because it was so good, and it was really similar to that, where the one day Dean was trying to get himself punished by Cass, who was the Dom in that one, and Cass had to be like, "No, you're trying to hurt yourself. Like, what is actually going on?" And I loved it. It was so good. But that just reminded me of that. I'm like, what is that fic called? So I had to look it up or else it was gonna bother me. But that's a good one too.
There you go. 3 different fandoms represented today in the fan fiction sphere. Love that.
If you don't mention SDL, you're really talking about gay books. You don't have to keep that, but I had to say
it. The peak queer stuff in the fan fiction. There is something to be said that there is a huge percentage of fan fiction is LGBTQ plus positive because of the fact that for so long legitimate media, not legitimate, fan fiction is legitimate, but like traditional media, that's a better word. Commercial media wasn't allowed to show those sorts of relationships. And even still today, it's like far and few between, and they're kind of delegated to very specific roles in stories. We're only just now starting to see more varied and different stories being shown. So queer culture and fanfiction culture has like a huge overlap in the Venn diagram of stuff. So yeah, if you have ever watched a show and you've been like, those two characters were being super gay, but they never kissed, there's plenty of fan fiction out there, I promise you, of them super kissing all the time. Go for it.
That's actually something that I was thinking about too. And so when you said that you were going to talk about fan fiction, I was like, that's super pride related. So I teach at I'm getting my PhD, but I also teach the like freshman writing course. And we are in the process of revamping the like essay curriculum for that course. And one of the things that we did not have enough of in the curriculum, like essays have not been refreshed in a really long time. Like I taught an essay this semester that was like published the year I was born, to freshmen who are really confused by this. But I was actually just searching like for like the scholastic tradition of like talking about that too, about how like fan fiction is such a, as writing, right? I was like, what a great way to get LGBTQ plus issues like into my class in a way that's related, right?
Yeah.
Because it talks about like whose stories can be told where and how you also make space for your story to be like put out there in a way that's also like not commercialized also. And it's just like the whole wonderful like community situation. So yes, I am actively trying to get like essays on this in the curriculum.
I don't want to bring down the mood, and this is a larger conversation than this episode itself. Also, there is the fact that I am sure we have talked about this before based on um what I kind of remember of our discussion of Michaela's picks in past episodes I've been a part of, is just the numbers within fan fiction of, I think, predominantly male pairing focus, but then also a very large readership of, and like creatorship of, cis heterosexual women. And I don't want to put values on anything, especially when you get down to individual creators and readers and everything like that. But it is, especially when you get into like the shipping of characters from these properties of like who gets representation even within these spaces. Maybe I'll come back with a discussion on Dungeon Meshi because I follow some people who discuss that like the more or less canonical relationship between the two like main women in the story being just like a tiny fraction as opposed to like the male pairings and all those configurations and the main men. And it's just where that attention falls is, I think, at least worthy of discussion in like an academic context that is looking at it.
And I think also then you have to historicize it too, because if you just go back to like quote unquote multicultural children's literature, right? We went through a period where it was only like the white Christian story, right? And then there's like this boom of multicultural books, but they are books written about other cultures written by white people, right? And so, but like that was considered a step forward at the time because at least those stories were like being represented, if not written by them, and that's how you get like the own voices thing too. And so I think like then you can talk about like how this is a historical thing that we do, like where we like say, oh, we're bringing these stories in, but they're like being co-opted by the wrong, not necessarily the wrong writer.
Yeah, but like that, you really get into very tricky
terms. But I think what you're talking about too, it translates, it's not just a fan fiction problem though, right? Because it translates to, again, I read a lot of romance and a lot of
I will also say that I'm going to give pushback there, specifically in the SETI fandom. The sheer number of trans writers, specifically trans masc writers, is like crazy compared to what I have seen elsewhere.
That's
like
really interesting.
Almost every single author, if I follow them to their socials, either it is something non-binary or something trans masc, or like there's definitely a whole lot there. And then there's also the question of like, are you queer enough to write this queer thing? Even if you're a lesbian writing about gay men, there's definitely like certain things. This is like for fun, for free. Nobody's making money off of somebody else's identity here. So like there is also that thing. But yes, I do agree that there's like a weird thing of like.
But and that's what I was saying too, because like weird trends like that like transfer over into then like what gets like commercially published too, right?
Yeah.
Because like I mean some of the most popular queer romance novels have been male. I am seeing way more lesbian ones recently as someone who like haunts the Edelweiss, like what can I get for arcs? There was a period of time where it was like all male, and now I'm like I have a huge number of lesbian arcs coming up. Just gonna sell that to the channel. But like that was the whole thing too with like Casey McQuiston and then like having to like come out about their identity and like who gets to write what. It's super It's super tricky because then you do with commercial publishing then get the added thing of people are then making money off of this.
Yeah.
And then who's not being published because a publishing house said, well, we have our one lesbian, you know, which is a problem for people of color as well. It's like, you know,
they
we
only
have
need
our
the
one
one token lesbian. Yeah, one token. Yeah.
So, I mean, publishing is just messed up.
Accurate.
But
yeah. I can also say that I'm seeing a lot more lesbian things recently, and I don't know if it's just because the vast majority of fiction authors are women in specific spaces, usually in romance spaces. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them are. So
like I'm also seeing those trends. I think it's going to be another few years before I have the context to really know how I feel about it, or I guess
yes.
think
I
it
will
looks.
say with the romance genre though, just in general, like whatever it is, you also need to like double check on some of those authors because there also has been a number of female romance authors that have been found out to have been men just writing under a woman's name because they wanted to write that romance. And
at the same time, there are a lot of authors who just like are in the closet or have strange words that they don't really feel like walking us through that describe how they feel. So it's like I never want to get into saying like this is the wrong sort of representation, but I do see that like even outside of commercial publishing, we can see these, you know, these trends in the shape of things in certain ways that are interesting to examine, I guess, in that way that we've been discussing. I really appreciate all the context you are both bringing to it from those spaces.
Yeah. There is somebody who I follow on Tumblr that writes Steady Fix, like reposted something that they posted a really long time ago about that was them before they came out as trans masks, talking about why they, quote unquote, a woman were writing gay fan fiction. And then they were like, hey, check in on all of your old fan fiction authors because they might actually be men now, was like the the comment.
There are a lot of creators I follow where like you can do that, but it takes, you know, 10 or 15 years.
Yes, yeah.
And like the thing you connected to is like very much there, but it's like completely different trajectory than you expected.
Yes. So yeah, it's hard to say. Like even if they identify one way at the time of writing, that it might be a way of them exploring some other part of their identity that they didn't get to or couldn't in any other way. So
we are none of us fixed in space.
I'm fixed. I am the exact same always. Autism.
I was also just gonna say too, it's just like there's also something to be said about like with the explosive number of queer fics just in general. Like I'm not saying straight people should, like, I'm not gonna write one. Okay. Like I know it's not my place and not my space. But at the same time, also it's like also showing you the shift of like when it was super taboo and no one could write them. And now it's like kind of like a cool thing to do. And so I'm not saying it's right
as hard as possible. Write Mpreg Omega Fix from the start. Just start there and you're good. You've hit every box. No, you don't agree?
I'm just saying no, because I'm not, it's not for me. I know people like those. Go for it. I'm good.
Yeah, I listened to Michaela describe them to me. That is as close as I am getting to
I
that
just
one.
have fun reading weird stuff.
I read one by accident when I had no business reading that sort of thing. And I've been traumatized ever since. So I'm not about to do it again.
Off air, Michaela, I'd love to talk some more about where Sonic the Hedgehog would fit into that.
So thank you guys so much for joining us for another amazing reading roundtable. This is definitely one where there was nothing terrible in this round, which is great. That's normally me. I mean, I know, Des, but you still gave it like 3.5 stars. Whereas like the last time we did a reading roundtable, I brought a book I had DNF 50% of the way in. So like, you know, I've set the bar really low.
This was close to a DNF, but I was like, no, I have to finish it so I can talk about why I hated it. And that's the only reason I finished it.
Sounds like the star rating is dropping by the minute.
I'm gonna be sorry with you. It kind of is. The more I think about it, the more I'm just like,
okay, no. I'm sorry. There was one
dear.
terrible thing. Des brought it, but at least it wasn't me this time. So you know what? I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna ride off into the sunset with it. This is one of the last videos that we're going to put out in May, at least as like multiple people content. I'm trying to get back into reading with my semester ending. We'll see how it goes. But you know, Michaela and I are always just like, why is life so hard? And then we're dealing with that instead of making content. So we apologize. But we are so grateful for our friends like Des and Taylor, who join us for these awesome reading roundtables where we can just hang out all together on a Zoom and laugh and have fun. And it makes it just so great. And we hope that you've also enjoyed and take some recommendations, whether it's the books that we brought or other recommendations that were given based on somebody's book. Michaela and I have not yet decided what we are doing for our Betwixt content coming up in June. So that will be as much of a surprise to you as it will be to us. So that is how we plan things here at Betwixt the Books. And then we do have an unthemed reading roundtable planned for June. So we will just be bringing whatever with whoever wants to join us. So we will see you for some things in June. So thanks again to Des and Taylor for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.